Hello, everybody. It is 1 o'clock, so we are going to get going here on our interest rate and local real estate market webinar. We're going to try to keep this short, 15, 20 minutes, get everybody off their lunch breaks and back to work. Thanks so much to everyone for jumping on here. Excited to share a little bit of information about interest rates, where they're at currently, what we see for the rest of the year, what that means for the local real estate market, all that kind of stuff. A couple of housekeeping things. We have the Q&A available. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see Q&A. If you want to send a question, feel free to do that. Thanks to those that sent a question in ahead of time. I'll answer those at the end of the webinar. And if anybody wants to type in a question in real time while we're on here chatting, that's great. It'll come to me. I don't think it'll be viewable by everybody, but I'll get it and can read it and make sure I try to answer those at the end. Okay, so let's jump into it. So we'll start with, if you guys don't know me, if anyone doesn't know me on here, I'm Cam Sullivan. I'm in Oakville, Ontario, doing real estate in this area in kind of the Halton, Hamilton region for the last 10 years now. It's been a long time. Yeah, I have my wife, Susie, 5 little kids, so busy home life, busy work life, but it's all a lot of fun. So I feel really blessed that I get to do this job and help a lot of great people in the area. Okay, today, what we're going to talk about, like I said already, we're going to go over interest rates and the local real estate market. I got my notes here. We're going to I'll do an overview of interest rates, do kind of historical, and then focus in on the last couple of years when interest rates have become very important, I would say of a lot of interest to people. Before that, people didn't care too much about it, I think, when interest rates were always low and everybody was pretty happy, but last couple of years, they've become more and more important. We'll talk about our current interest rates high compared to historical averages. We'll get into predictions for the rest of the year, which I think is what a lot of people are curious about. Where do we see interest rates going? Where do we see the local real estate market going as a result? So we'll talk about our interest rate predictions for the rest of the year. We'll talk about what those mean for the local real estate market. If interest rates do change, what's going to happen in the local market? And I'll finish off answering people's questions that they sent in. And again, if you have questions live, feel free to put it in the Q&A section. And then I'll just finish off a little summary. Okay, let's get going. Overview of interest rates. So we've got data going back to the 1970s, about 1975 for interest rates. And if you're curious, some people, ask us what's better, variable or fixed. I think I know when I grew up, when I got my first mortgage, I got a fixed. I think that was kind of the standard. But in 44 of the last 50 years, variable has been the lower rate compared to fixed rates. So if you're ever curious or trying to tell your kids or friends or whoever what they should do, variable 88% of the time beats fixed rates. You do have to ride the waves. Variable will have higher peaks and lower valleys, I guess, than fixed rates. So you have to ride those out. But over time, you should be better off with the variable mortgage. Going back those 50 years, looking at variable mortgages, the average rate over the last 50 years of a variable mortgage is 6.81%. So I'll say that again. Average variable mortgage over the last 50 years, 6.81%. Average 5-year fixed mortgage rate in Canada over the last 50 years, 8.63%. So that backs up what we're saying there, that variables over time beat fixed rates. 6.81% compared to 8.63%. Little fun fact for you, the lowest ever mortgage was September of 2021. So if you locked into a 5-year fixed in September of 2021, that was the lowest that we have recorded data for. People were getting 1.44% at that time, which is basically free money. And the highest ever recorded, if you're on here and you've been owning real estate for the last couple of decades, the highest rates ever recorded were in 1981. A 5-year fix would cost you 21.75% at that time, which is pretty crazy. So that was historically kind of 1975, and then I'll jump up to about 2020. So rates have become more of a focus in the last 2 to 4 years. When COVID hit in 2020, governments dropped their overnight rate. which is the rate that determines variable mortgage rates. I won't get into the details of it, but so the government dropped their overnight rate to 0.25%, almost zero. And the reason they did that is, the pandemic hit and they wanted the economy to keep moving. They wanted people to keep spending money. So they were trying to encourage low borrowing costs and people to be able to keep spending so that people could be employed and businesses could sustain themselves and the economy could keep going. I noticed a couple people just jumped on here, so I'll just reiterate. If anybody has any questions, go down to the Q&A section at the bottom and feel free to drop it in there, and I will make sure to answer those all at the end of the webinar. Okay, so COVID hits, government drops their rate to 0.25%, and they held it there for about 2 years, till February of 2022. As you would expect, this was the peak of real estate prices. Interest rates and real estate prices have an inverse relationship. As interest rates come down, mortgage payments come down, and that means that buyers are able to spend more on the property because their monthly mortgage payment is going to be less. So governments held the rates at pretty much nothing, at 0.25% for 2 years. Through COVID, if anyone was paying attention, we noticed that prices went insane. Prices really went up. They peaked in February of 2022. Now, the government had told people that if they were going to raise rates, they were only going to do it a quarter point at a time. That didn't end up happening. As we saw in 2022, inflation through the pandemic went crazy as well. Got over 8% at one point. And in February 2022 is at 6%. And so the government started raising interest rates off of that 0.25% rate that they had. They didn't stick to their quarter point at a time raise. Most people said, hey, if they raise rates, it'll come up 1% within the year. They went for a full 4% within 2022. And they were really trying to slam the brakes on the economy that had gone crazy. People through COVID were able to bank a lot of money. There was government stimulus going around. People weren't traveling, weren't spending on anything. So they just went crazy spending locally. Home improvements, new cars, all this kind of stuff. If people remember, car prices through the pandemic went bananas. Cars actually went up in value because there was so much demand for them. So people were spending money and the government really wanted to slow that down. So they really raised rates aggressively, 4% within the year. In 2023, they raised the overnight rate again, another 0.75%, 0.75%. And so the overnight rate went up to 5% total. And that's where the last raise they did was July of 2023. And that's where it's held to today. So overnight rate plays into mortgage rates. So currently you can get a variable mortgage for about 6.3% today. And you can get a 5-year fixed for about 4.99% today. So that was kind of the long history from 1975 till now, and then a more detailed look at the last couple of years and why rates have gone up so much to where they are now. So I just said those current rates: variable mortgage of 6.3, fixed mortgage of 4.9. One thing I just wanted to touch on quick is I hear a lot of people saying these days that, rates are high, we're going to wait for them to come down. But our rate's really high. If we look at that historic data, I said that on average, a variable mortgage over the last 50 years has been 6.81%. Currently it's 6.3. So that's actually below the average. Same with fixed. Average 5-year fixed was 8.63%, and it's right now 4.99%. So we're actually seeing rates that are below historic averages. I get from buyers' perspectives, it does feel high because we were in this crazy low interest rate environment for the last couple of years. And the other thing that I think is making it feel really high is I found some data on the percentage of people's incomes that's going towards their monthly mortgage payment. And it's at a really high number. 78% of the median household income is going towards the median mortgage payment these days in Canada. 78%. That's really high. It was only topped in the 1990s when interest rates went up to those 20% ranges. People were spending about 94% of their average income on their mortgage payment at that time. And previously, if you're curious, so 78% today. Previously, it was closer to like 50% or so. People were spending their median income on their mortgage payment. Okay, so let's get into a little future casting here. We'll talk about predictions for the rest of the year. So obviously, a little disclaimer, no one's got the crystal ball. I'm in this every day. I'm in the real estate market. I'm adjacent to mortgages every single day, paying attention, reading about all this stuff. So this is my educated guess. Everybody has their own, but this is mine. So there is another interest rate announcement tomorrow, April the 10th. My prediction, and I think most people are thinking, that the Bank of Canada is going to hold rates. They're going to keep it at that 5% overnight rate, not going to change anything tomorrow. The next announcement after tomorrow is June 5th. And most people, most economists are predicting about a 70% chance that the government will drop rates at that point. I think it'll come down about 0.25%, a quarter of a percent or so in June. The rest of the year is up for debate. My prediction, and I have a little friendly bet with a friend of mine, Mark, who's a realtor in my office as well. I think that they're going to do one more drop of a quarter point. So a total of 0.5% this year, maybe 0.75%. But I've said to Mark, hey, I think it's going to be less than 1% that they're changing rates this year. That might sound small compared to what some people were thinking. I know coming into the year, there was predictions of rates dropping a lot more than that. But I don't think that the bank's going to do it quickly. They're going to make sure that the other factors that they're looking at, the other economic indicators, specifically inflation, are still trending in the right direction. Inflation has been coming down since June of 2022, where it peaked at over 8%. We're down to 2.8%, but we're still not at that target of 2%. So I don't think the bank wants to add fuel to the fire by dropping rates too quickly and seeing people getting out there and spending. We're also, the Canadian economy is so tied to the US, so I keep track of the US economy closely as well. And the US is delaying their rate decreases as well for the same reason. The labor market is really strong. People are employed, people are working, earning an income, and they have money to spend, and they don't want people to overspend and really get inflation going again. So that's my predictions for the rest of 2024. I'm going to say a 0.5% to maximum of 1% interest rate drop for the rest of the year. Okay, so what does this mean for the local real estate market? Okay, so looking at the market in 2024, so far from January to about March break, prices in our area, and again, I'm based out of Oakville, kind of cover the Halton, Hamilton regions. Prices in that area came up about 9% from January to March break, which is a pretty big increase pretty fast. When we were working with clients and when we're monitoring the market, what we believe is happening there is that a lot of buyers in the new year were anticipating rates coming down this year, and we're trying to get ahead of it, saying, hey, I want to buy now before rates come down and before prices go up as a result. So a lot of buyers entered the market in the new year. They were out there excited to buy their home and get into the market before prices really start taking off. We did notice after March break, the number of sales declined near the end of the month. And what I believe is happening there is that, like I said, prices went up 9% from January to March break, but interest rates have not changed yet this year. So this happened last year, and I believe it's happening now. I think we've hit that point where prices have hit a level with the current interest rates where buyers are saying, hey, we can't pay more. We could, when prices were here in January, we could afford more, but now we're reaching that point and saying, look, we can't go higher than this because rates haven't changed. Our payment's going to be X, and we really can't exceed that. So we're seeing a bit more buyer hesitancy, especially on the higher end of the market. Homes taking more time to sell, people being more selective, price decreases, all that kind of stuff. What I think is going to happen from now, April 9th, until the announcement in June, it could be pretty flat. I don't see a lot changing. I don't see interest rates aren't going to change. If they hold tomorrow, they're not going to change again until June. So nothing's going to change on the interest rate side. And like I said, I'm not seeing buyers able to pay more. I don't think salaries are going up or people aren't going to come into more money by that point. It's not enough time to save more to really put more down on the home. So I don't really see prices changing from now till June. If rates do drop in June, then just mathematically, buyers are able to afford more. So at that point, if we do see a rate decrease, we could see more buyers that'll qualify to be able to buy and be able to spend more on their purchase. So that might happen in June. And then, like I said, if there is another drop in the fall, same thing could happen in the fall. More buyers will be able to qualify, more people will enter the market and be able to purchase their home. In the beginning of the year, I predicted about a 5 to 10% price growth for the year. Like I said, we've already seen 9%, so we're almost there. Going forward, I think the remainder of the year, it could be a bit up and down, and I'll touch on a reason for that. Well, actually, I'll just say one reason now. So we've kind of hit this point where prices are here and interest rates are here. And what we might actually see happen is at the end of last year, a lot of homes were on the market and not selling, and about a third of them or half of them canceled and came off the market. If those sellers are now saying, hey, prices are pretty good in March, April of 2024, they may come back on the market and there may be a lot more supply on the market, which will then tip the scales a little bit in favor of buyers. So that may actually bring prices down a little bit if buyers have a bit more choice, more options, more power in the negotiation. So we may, over the rest of the year, see prices go up and down a little bit as the number of homes for sale increase, as rates decrease and more buyers enter. It may move a little bit like this. I think at the end of the year, we are going to be up from where we are right now, price-wise. Prices are going to be higher at the end of the year, but it might be a bit of an up and down through the summer months. There's a lull in demand, come back in the fall, and then maybe lull towards Christmas again. So we will end up, but it might be a bit of a roller coaster to get there. So that's the implications for the market for the rest of 2024. Looking past that, 2025 and onward, it gets really challenging. That's really far out to predict. It's tough to know what economic factors are going to come into play at that time. It's tough to know, all the factors that are going to change prices, demand, supply, all those things. I did read an article by the CMHC, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and they expect that in 2025 that prices are going to get back to those peak levels that they were at in 2022. Even though those were so high and hard to fathom getting back there, especially that fast, their data, their models say that we think we're going to get back there. And in 2026, they think we'll surpass those prices, which is hard to believe, but everyone who's studying these things, that's kind of the conclusion they're coming up with. They had a quote that declining mortgage rates in 2024. So like I said, we think that rates are going to come down. Declining mortgage rates and the country's strongest population growth since the 1950s will likely spur a rebound in home sales and prices. So real estate is a supply and demand game. There'll be more demand because we've had more population growth and more people will be able to afford a home if rates do come down. And the other side of it is supply. And this is where we have an issue. Builders aren't building enough homes fast enough. And part of that is because interest rates are high. So they have high financing costs. So builders aren't as incentivized to really undertake these massive, massive projects right now. The cost to finance them is really high. Also, we saw through COVID, the cost of materials got really high. The cost of wood, everything that goes into a house got really, really expensive. So it's high financing for builders to get loans to build everything. It's high materials, high labor. So the cost going into these new homes is super high, meaning that builders can't sell them for the profit they're looking for because prices came down when they started raising interest rates. So the numbers don't work right now. For a builder to buy land, get the financing, build the home, pay the trades, and then what they could sell it for, they're looking at the numbers and saying, hey, this isn't worth it for us. So that's why we're not seeing a lot of home building starts, and we're not seeing that supply catch up to the demand that we need. Okay, so that is a lot of information in 18 minutes. I hope that was helpful for you guys. Like I said, if anyone has a question, put it in the Q&A there, and I will do my best to answer it on the fly. We did have a couple questions that were sent in ahead of time, so I'll go over those now. But as I'm talking, if anyone wants to know anything about interest rates, potential direction of interest rates, direction of the local real estate market, then put it in there, and I'm happy to do my best to cover it. Okay, so one of the questions that was sent in ahead of the webinar was, do we think that buyers are waiting for interest rates to go down before purchasing? Will that encourage house prices up more than the savings on interest? So this is a smart question. So I'll answer it in two parts. Do we think buyers are waiting for interest rates to go down before purchasing? Kind of. I would say that we saw, in my opinion, we saw a rush in buyers in January to early March. And I think that was people trying to get ahead of interest rate increases because they thought prices would go up as interest rates come down. So we've already seen some buyers get into the market. And now, like I said, I think we've hit that point where buyers can't afford to pay more. So in essence, yes, people are waiting for rates to come down so that they can be able to qualify and get into the market. So now I think, yes, I think people are waiting. And then the second part of the question, will that encourage prices to go up more than the savings on interest? So this is a cool mathematical question. I went to school for accounting, so my brain likes this kind of stuff. So I just ran some quick numbers. If somebody bought a home for $1 million, let's say, it's a big number, but we live in an area where that's pretty close to the average price of a property. So if you bought a home for $1 million and you put 20% down, $200,000 down, you've got an $800,000 mortgage. At today's rates, you would end up paying about $594,486 in interest. $594,486 in interest. So you add that to your $800,000 principal, and that would be the total you would pay off over the 25 years of your mortgage. So the question is, if rates come down, does that and prices go up, does that negate any gains? So I did some quick math. If rates drop by the 0.5% this year that I think they will, a buyer could only afford to buy that same property for $1,040,000, 1040. And they would end up paying the same amount over the lifetime in principal and interest. So that means, you could buy for $1 million today, or if rates come down, you could buy for $1,040,000 on $1 million is a 4% price increase. So that's really what we're wagering. If prices come down, if interest rates come down 0.5%, will prices go up 4% or more, negating any type of gain from waiting for rates to drop? I think that's likely to happen. I think if interest rates do come down 0.5%, then we're probably going to see a 4% plus jump in prices. Remember, at the beginning of the year, we saw a 9% jump in prices and interest rates didn't change at all. It was just supply and demand, more buyers in the market, less homes for sale, people bidding for homes, and homes going up in value. So if we have an actual change where interest rates come down and people are able to afford more, to me, that'll change the demand side of the equation. And I think that'll push prices up past the 4%. So yes, I think waiting for rates to come down, I think you're going to be behind in the game that you're trying to play. You're not going to net more in the end. So I would say the thing to do is probably to qualify and purchase today if you can. And then when rates drop, then you can get into a lower mortgage. Then you've got the best of both worlds. You've purchased at a lower amount, and when rates drop, you've also locked into a lower interest rate as well. Hope that made sense. Again, if you have any questions, throw it in the Q&A. Last question that was sent in ahead of time here was interest rate forecast and outlook. I think we covered that a little bit. The second part of the question was potential for increased foreclosures, realizing that rates are dropping, but mortgages are also renewing. So this person was curious about where rates are going. We've talked about that. We think they're coming down this year. And then specifically how the current rates are playing into foreclosures in Canada. So I looked it up. Foreclosures in Canada are really low. It's only about 0.15%. So not even 1% of mortgages end up being foreclosed on. Not even it's less than 0.2%. Ontario is actually lower than the Canadian average. Ontario is about 0.1%. The people that are feeling it a little bit worse than Ontario are the prairies and Atlantic Canada. There's a higher foreclosure rate in those areas of the country. I think the people in those 0.15% that are facing foreclosure, when I look at homes for sale and it says who the seller is, and maybe sometimes it's a mortgage trust company or Scotiabank or something like that, I think the people that are feeling it are probably the people that took private mortgages when rates were at their lowest. So it could have been someone with poor credit or couldn't qualify for A-level financing at that time. So they went to a secondary lender, which when rates were at their lowest, you could get a second mortgage, a B mortgage, whatever you want to call it, for 4 to 5%, which isn't terrible. However, as rates skyrocketed, that 4 to 5% became 10 to 12% that you're now paying on your B lender mortgage. And that's, that's not manageable, especially if you purchased at a high price. So I think the people that are feeling it and are facing foreclosure are the ones that went for that secondary financing and now really just can't afford it. So in answer to the question, I don't see foreclosures really spiking a lot. I think that people are really cutting back on other things in order to make their mortgage payments, just luxuries, travel, things like that. And I also think what's happening is that the baby boomer generation is maybe looking at their kids who maybe bought a big house when rates were low and prices were high, and the kids are feeling it. And I think the baby boomers are saying, okay, I'm not going to let my kids lose their house. So they're doing a refinance and loaning the kids some money or doing private mortgages with their kids. So I think people are doing everything that they can to keep their house and avoid that foreclosure at all costs. So I don't think it's going to impact the market too much or really go up too much. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions dropped in the Q&A, no problem. If anyone does have questions, you can feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'll do a quick summary and then I'll get you all back to your lunch break and back to work. So summary, rates we believe are going to drop this year. I'm predicting 0.5% to 0.75%. I don't think it's going to be 1% or more. I'll do a friendly wager with you guys if you think it is. Prices are going to go up as a result of that. My suggestion would be to buy now before prices go up and then to lock into a lower mortgage rate when they come down. 2025 and beyond is really hard to predict, but Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation and a lot of experts are predicting that just because of the supply-demand imbalances, that we are going to surge past those highs of 2022 and beyond. So that's a quick summary of interest rates and the local real estate market. Hope that was helpful for everybody. Thank you so much for giving us your time and for jumping on. And if people have any questions, you can reach out anytime. Call me on my cell, send us an email, reach out to us on social media. We're always happy to chat. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you guys soon.